We are saying every time, everyone, water is life. But water is just not only life. Water making the climate and climate making water. So we can say today, water is climate and climate is water.
Welcome to Facing Future. Water is critical for life. It is also the regulator of our climate. As floods and droughts plague the world, a new understanding of the dynamics of water and its cycles is urgently needed. We need to recover the meandering flow of rivers so that they can again nurture the land and bring back its ecological integrity. This is the message of the beautiful new film, Water is Love. With me today to introduce the film and the work of the Tamera Peace Research and Education Center in Portugal are Martin Winiecki, networker and leader of the Institute for Global Peace Work at Tamera, co-director and writer for the film Water is Love, and Isabel Rosa Zabu, who is also a co-creator and coordinator for the film. Welcome to you both. It's so exciting to have you here.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
Martin, can you begin and tell us a little bit about this really exciting work?
We started this journey some years ago, actually being very moved by the awakening, especially of students, for the existential threat of the climate crisis, and at the same time facing the systemic paradox of appealing to governments that are so bound to the capitalist growth forever agenda. And at the same time, being part of a place in southern Portugal, in an area that is strongly affected by climate change, by desertification, in a place where for over 15 years now, we ourselves have experimented with water conservation and ecological regeneration and see the positive potential of community-driven, decentralized water management. We felt this need, this urge to connect these different streams of responses to the climate crisis. And so what Water is Love does is it follows the journey of young people that are existentially shaken by this realization of this ecological crisis threatening the world, but also especially their futures. Coming to Tamera, coming to this place and going through a youth camp that transforms them in many ways. Their thinking, their ways of, their ideas of relating to each other, but also to nature, becoming aware of the potential of what communities can do to regenerate ecosystems through water conservation. And so the film also then shows some of the projects with whose leaders they come in contact with. So we look at this remarkable project in Kenya, where people have been using these technologies not just to restore nature, but also to respond to famine locally and feed people through organic food self-sufficiency. And then also Rajendra Singh's work in India, who was an Ayurvedic doctor that over 40 years ago started a movement using very similar techniques of rainwater conservation that has resulted in the largest community-driven ecosystem regeneration effort on the planet. So they managed to bring 11 rivers back to life, restoring thousands of square kilometers of desert, lowering regional average temperatures by 2 degrees. So these are really remarkable stories, almost fairy tales in times of climatic breakdown and economic globalization. So the film goes very much in contact with the existential severity of the ecological crisis, but also tells a story about the potential of communities coming together to restore ecosystems. And also about, the film is called Water is Love. So that it also brings in this awareness that it's not just a matter of different techniques, but a different relationship with Earth, a recognition of the sacredness of water, of nature, and of how different human connections are the ground that enable these community-driven enterprises.
In such a catastrophic moment, one wonders if it's possible that some places can survive despite the rising heat. and the storms that are coming, and whether this movement can spread widely enough, fast enough to affect more and more people, or whether these are going to be isolated communities that may survive. I really would love that the paradigm of this spreads, because this is the only hope that I see in the world. So, I was really happy to see your project and your incredible film, which really makes the case that we need to be looking at water, that carbon isn't really the only or major issue, even that water really is the basis for life.
Yeah, I think in many ways we don't know if we, as you say, like we don't know what the result of all of this will be. And if there is a mass awakening to this different relationship with water, with each other, we might see a regenerative movement that can prevent some catastrophic breakdown. But even if it doesn't go this way, out of these regenerating bioregions, they might be the seeds for a post-collapse society. So regardless of what the result is, I think it is worthwhile engaging, because this is our best shot of creating a future for ourselves, but also the generations afterwards.
Isabel, you have worked in this project for quite some time, originally coordinating it, and now, helping to create the project. What would you like to tell us about it?
I think it's, for me, one of the keys, it's Martin said, it's about love, in a way that how I relate with the planet. And ultimately, it's also how I relate with myself and with the others. And when this youth came to this youth camp that at the time in 2019 was called the Planet Bee, we also understand how the relationship between myself and the earth is the key to change how I treat the earth, and then how I treat water, and then where creativity can come, and already ways of being with the water in a natural way, with this water retention landscape that we speak about, can be one of the many possibilities. And I think to inspire people to do that, not just with water retention landscape, but also with urban farming, and also with swales, and also with other possibilities around. I think this is one of the things, it's to inspire young people to take an action if they want to, and that hope is not so hopeless, that there is not so much hopeless, because it's difficult. On the other hand, at the same time, we had another event called Defend the Sacred, which also brought together activists from around the world, and also elders that are here for a long time, and youth and elders, they came together. So this intergenerational connection, I felt also very important in the film, that we all thought it could be really a good inspiration to bring both generations to speak about it.
The day that we gathered with the elders was probably one of my favorites of the youth camp. To be able to ask this older generation about some of my burning questions about what life looked like when they were younger, what education did they have around indigenous issues, what education did they have around the climate crisis when they were our age, and seeing how much these adults supported our visions, and how much we were really on the same page was really important to me.
Well, the young people, are really faced with a horrible dilemma. Do they feed into the patriarchal, destructive, exploitive system that exists, where wars are everywhere and we live in a paradigm of such violence? Or is there a new kind of society that's rising up, a new world that will come out of this crisis, where people are more communities, as you've created in Tamera and other places? Can people go from urban environments and learn new skills? How many people can we sort of save?
Or how can people start to take action more in their environment? Because this is also, as much as I take care in my own environment and joy with friends and then create communities, it doesn't need to be a place like Tamera as a community that we are living together, but there is also if I live in a village, or if there is land around, and if I work with the earth, and if there is food start to be providing and also regenerating the land in a way that water are in abundance and springs can come, this is also another way of change, I would say, then the local economy, and then we start. So it's also this ripple effect. It's possible, but we need to come together. We need to change the relationship with each other, I think.
Certainly. Martin, you work on this Institute for Global Peace Work. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Tamera's work is on modeling or researching the foundations of, let's say, a post-capitalist nonviolent culture. The community dates back many decades and focuses a lot on creating social and ecological structures for a nonviolent and regenerative way of life. But we also recognize that in this work, it is so important to be connected with groups that are following a similar vision for a different world, even if their primary work is in different fields. Obviously, the work on ecological regeneration and on creating self-sufficient and autonomous bioregions is just as much a driver in this potential tapestry of systemic change. And so IGP, the Institute for Global Peace Work, is both communicating our findings as Tamera, sharing it with the world so other groups have access to it, but also creating links with them, facilitating communication. And we also have partnerships, especially with some communities in the Global South that are facing really the brunt of this globalized, extractive, planet-killing machine, and are in active need of advocacy, of defense, of witnessing. So some of our work is also in that, of like offering solidarity, support. So it is an attempt of contributing to this global need of interconnection and solidarity between groups that are trying to make a different world.
Well, in your film, you have this man in India, Rajendra Singh, who's just such a beautiful spirit, who's restored those 11 rivers there. India is a place that's very threatened. It's like sort of the climate target, as is Kenya, which is another place, and as you say, Portugal.
Yep.
These are all places that are on the forefront of the disaster. So if it can be done there, it could be done anywhere, hopefully. These are kind of like seeds. You call them biotopes, that you hope to link like seeds around the world that may spread. How is this movement spreading? Of course, by the film, by education, but how do you see the future for it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a huge emergence, especially in the Global South, of social movements, indigenous movements. Like it's actually remarkable when you look at like the history of and the ongoing nature of this massive colonial violence that has come from especially from Europe and destroying indigenous cultures around the world. When you see the movements of anti-colonial resistance that have preserved communities and that are now standing up, and especially in the Global South, we have these really remarkable examples, and the movement that Rajendra Singh started, Taran Bharat Sangh, which now works in all the states of India and has created these big examples of entire self-sufficient bioregions, not just self-sufficient, but actually in some ways examples of what Vandana Shiva calls earth democracy. So you have people that have their river parliaments to defend and steward water and land autonomously. So these are real examples of what we could call a post-capitalist infrastructure. And so I see an important process of these movements coming together and learning from each other while respecting their diversity and difference, recognizing that like there are actually no universal models, but like each context is different. And then I also see the need for what is the particular role of healing biotopes, which is really like places where we try to go very deep in the research of transforming even the subtle interpersonal traumatic psychological spiritual layers of of cultures of violence. So places that can really embody in a very profound way a non-violent regenerative way of life, and I think these can help catalyze the growth of this movement. And I also see them as seeds. I also see them as seeds that can help these bioregions, these autonomous bioregions, to thrive.
We have a very linear way of thinking. If you look at most people's, if they have a garden, it's all everything is, you know. My garden is like crazy. I have, all kinds of animals living in it. And I say, well, I live in nature and I'm not controlling nature. We have this concept and have had for a long time that we engineer nature, that nature is some kind of a mechanical thing that we can drive into whatever we want. And as a result, have produced the ecological disaster all around the world. And as you say, what's required really is a new way of thinking, a change in consciousness that has to precede anything that can be done going forward. So that change in consciousness comes about through a great deal of work and pulling people out of the despair that they're in now. If they are aware of the climate crisis, it's terrifying. And empowering them to do actual work is really important. But how do you see that change in consciousness coming about, and what will be the new paradigm if we could achieve it?
Yeah, that's of course the multi-million-dollar question, and I think we shouldn't, as you say, like we're very used, especially in the West, to think in linear ways about change. So I think we should be aware not to go about it too linearly. I think there's a growing awareness around the world. Awareness around trauma, how it keeps us reproducing the very things we want to run away from, and also how we could potentially find wisdom through trauma. So I think a lot of it is bound up in kind of the hurts that we are trying to get away from. When we look at what human beings do to each other and to Earth. Like, I don't think that human beings are inherently evil. I think there's a deep sickness in many of the human cultures today. And so I think one way of the consciousness shift is in creating environments, communities that are actually, that have a sensibility for our wounds, so that we can create a culture of mutual care where we can actually heal from those wounds. And then the other thing is also something Isabel mentioned, the Defend the Sacred Alliance, which started in solidarity with the uprising of indigenous water protectors at Standing Rock in Turtle Island, North America, 2016, and then it evolved into this circle where indigenous leaders, social movement leaders, people from intentional communities came together to dialogue around sacred activism. And there was a lot of dismantling that happened in terms of my linear political thinking and also of whiteness in this context. One of the indigenous leaders kept repeating that, like, as long as you put in human intelligence at the center of your work, you'll continue to be lost. So there is like this reminder that of humility, that actually the biggest intelligence is in Earth. And so I'm still struck and keep learning from this, like just from how different the ontologies in indigenous cultures are compared to the Western ontology that has this hierarchical thinking where like the human rationality is kind of at the top of the pyramid, that we have kicked the Judeo-Christian God off the throne and placed ourselves there. And just this reminder that actually there is an intelligence and the guidance that comes from really like grounding in place, attuning to Earth intelligence. And I think there is a real need of like restoring culture as a place-based undertaking. Also, Isabel spoke about this, of like people on a local basis coming together to build community and let place and their interaction and the ecosystem teach them. These are two starting points. And I think we need to do a lot of work, especially as people in the West, to just dismantle the many ways in which we have been conditioned to shut down the sensibilities with which we would naturally be connected to these ways of knowing.
Yeah, I was hearing Martin, and that's it, because when I put the earth in the center of the politics in the system, then everything changed. Everything changed, right? So this is the thing. It's how we human beings know that we belong already to life, and we belong already to the earth and to the nature. Like as much as I'm alive, I'm in that. No, I have that connection always, and all the four elements around me, like water, air, and fire and air, it's the same inside of me and outside. And this is not a kind of exotic or transcendence thinking. It's like it's because I am alive because of that. So when I start to work on the land, when I start to look at the trees as a totally intimate relationship that I have, because without them I don't breathe, and as long as I start to see nature as part of me, there is something that I believe it can change, right? So when we show water is love and the connection with the earth, and how you can see the humus and what it means that the water really sink in the ground, and what it means that the springs then also can pop up. There is something, I think, on the human being that slowly starts to awake, right? But the language also needs to change for that. So, and I hope we can contribute as activists also for that to happen with Water is Love.
Water is such an amazing element. To allow water to flow, we've dammed up the rivers, we've built over them.
Exactly.
They're pumping the New York subways all the time because there were rivers under Manhattan. We've created such disbalances. We haven't listened to water in a sense. And to see how water does things. Water is penetrating. It goes into the ground. It stays, and then it cycles back into rain and so forth. And somehow we've not paid any attention to the hydrological cycle of the world. We've said, oh, we can use the river to pour our sewage into it, or we can use that bay. Oh, sure, let's just pollute it. And it's incredible how we have ignored the lessons of water. And this film really brings back that that understanding. It's so powerful and important.
And also, if I can add one more detail on the film, when Philip Muniasa from the project Otepica that we show from Kenya, also this thing that is, I can have a well on my land, but then it's also my responsibility to create conditions that well keep having water, and not that I just extracting the whole water and then I go and do the well on another place on the land. So this kind of thinking of we are gifted and we give it back. It's this way of relation, and that it's very symbiotic. It's very important, I think, for a system change also. It's one of the pieces also for that.
A part of the story of water is the story of our abuse of animals and the incredible amounts of water that are used to raise cattle around the world. And if we did that one thing, if we stopped exploiting the cattle with meat and dairy, that would be a huge step toward renewing the land and allowing it to recover and not to waste it, not to waste the water in this terrible way. But also our relation to all animals is something we have to pay attention to provide the habitat and share the water with the animals on the land.
We also can provide a safe space that all the animals can come there and please drink freely from the water retention landscapes that we have. Enjoy yourselves, because that's it. Ultimately, it's to be free.
We've lost a lot of the aquifers in the world because we've used it for farmland, and most of that farmland is going to grow feed.
Yeah, and maybe just also to add here that we just touch on it in the film, but there's other films that go more into it. But when we look at grazing animals, they've also been abused by the extractive industries and the dairy and meat industries, as you say. But they can also play a role in the regeneration of ecosystems. There's this amazing work of Alan Savory on holistic plant grazing, where animals are being given ways to move on land that imitates the movements of natural herds. and where we actually see that how wild grazing animals move, as all beings in nature, they fulfill particular ecological functions that allow the whole community, the whole ecosystem, to thrive. And so this is actually a very important piece when we think
I
of...
do know about the work of
Yeah.
Alan Savory, and don't find it very savory myself. I think we need to restore habitat for wildlife. We've wiped out 70% of the wildlife. So restoring the land for animals that we can eat is, to me, not the solution. I have to say.
I agree. I'm vegan myself. I'm totally with you, but I'm also thinking of like, what is, like, how can I picture the transformation, and how do we do this quick enough? And there's an acknowledgement that we have these billions of herding animals, and how can they be part of this transformation that we need, and we need it to happen very soon.
So we have a bit of time left. Is there something that you'd really like to say about your work or about the film before we close?
I would like to say that inside this film, there is parts of an animation that we also have and will have available from 20th of June at the platform Water Bear. And it's an animation about the broken water cycle and possibilities of regenerating. And it's a great animation for education or for schools. So, and maybe Martin speaks about the film.
Yeah, so we will have the online premiere next week on the 6th of June. The film will be freely available streaming for 72 hours. Go to waterislovefilm.org, and sign up. There's also an online summit that we are planning in early August, from the 1st to the 4th of August, with the title "What Does Water Want?", which we will have different conversations with regeneration practitioners, scientists, policymakers, indigenous leaders, to deepen basically on all the different aspects of the film. So this will be very rich conversations, and also, possibilities to learn more. And we would love for you to be part of that. And you can pre-register on our website on the same link, waterislovefilm.org. I'd love to see you there.
Yeah.
Great. All these links will be in the description, and people can click on them, and hopefully everyone should really watch this film. This film is really amazing, and the animation is very, very clear, and would be a fantastic tool for educators. So thank you both so much. I really appreciate your work, and I appreciate your being with me today on Facing Future TV.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for
also
having
for your
us.
work.
Água eu sei, tem alma, tem memória, tem saber. Água eu sei, tem alma, tem memória, tem saber. Água eu sei.